of, your dad and your grandpa going to CSU.
Mm-hmm.
Was it kind of ingrained, whether it was directly or indirectly early on, especially as you were getting older in high school and a good athlete, that did you just pretty much think you were going to go to Colorado State as well and carry on that family traditions?
Yeah, I mean, as a child, I thought, that was my dream, to play at Colorado State like my dad and grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to all the games as a kid. I remember going to the Colorado State, Colorado rivalry games at Mile High. So, yeah, I was always rooting for CSU. Even throughout middle school, I wore CSU shirts, hats. High school, I wore CSU shirts, hats, jackets. And then towards the end, I don't know. You just got to make your own decisions. You got to see what's best for you. And fortunately, I was able to have a family that supported me no matter what I wanted to do.
Right.
And, I don't regret it at all.
Sure.
I made a great decision. I've been a Wyoming Cowboy now. Done some things that, my dad's proud of, and he's a CSU fan. So,
right, yeah.
Everything worked out fine. They're supportive. They wear Wyoming stuff to my games, my grandpa and my dad. And, I always joke around and say they made me sleep outside for a week when I committed here to Wyoming, but they were very supportive, and I'm very, very blessed to have a family like that.
So growing up and going to games and talking to your dad and grandpa, you probably had to known about the border war and the rivalry and stuff. I mean, would it be safe to say, at least growing up and going to games, that you were not a Wyoming fan?
I was not a Wyoming fan. No, and I was taught to dislike Colorado and Wyoming, and that switched in a hurry once I went to high school. And, I think it's just an awesome, rival game between those two schools, Wyoming and Colorado State. And I think that's why it's so special to me as well, that game, just because for the longest time I was a big Colorado State fan. And then all of a sudden, I'm the hugest Wyoming fan.
Right.
I always will be.
Sure. So what changed, Brian? I know Coach English recruited you.
Yeah.
Was that what changed? How did it kind of go about? I know talking to your dad, Wyoming and Colorado State certainly recruited you hard. Both offered you. You took your recruiting visits to both within a couple weeks of each other. But when did Wyoming seriously come into the picture for you?
I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I had interest as soon as they contacted me. I remember, they caught my attention pretty quick.
And when did they first contact you, I guess? Were you a junior, or was it your senior year? Do you remember when they first contacted you?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I remember they were my first offer, and I remember opening the letter, and that was like my senior year, somewhere around there. But I remember Coach English recruited me hard, and just the talks that I had with him weekly, I could tell that he was he's a class act, and that's someone I wanted to play for. And Colorado State wanted me to play offense. My heart was at defense. And also, just when I took my visit here, it was just wonderful people here in the state of Wyoming, and that's something I really, I enjoyed. People were always saying I was crazy for picking Fort Collins over Laramie. Well, I think they're crazy because I think Laramie's 10 times better.
Really?
Has so much to offer, and it just came down to the people. Coach English was a great recruiter. It was a different staff back then, but even the new staff here, just great people, and I couldn't be happier.
So you said Wyoming, was Colorado State your first offer? What was your first scholarship offer, actually?
My first written offer was Wyoming.
It was Wyoming.
Yeah,
okay.
And then not soon after, a few days after, Colorado State jumped on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you know? When was it when you finally knew, the first time you knew that you were going to come to Wyoming? Was it right after your visit here? Or, because I understand from what your dad said, after the Wyoming visit, you went to Colorado State.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So when did you really know that you were going to come here to the University of Wyoming?
I took my visit here my senior year, and Weston Johnson, who was a linebacker here, was my host. And it was still up in the air after that visit. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And probably 20 minutes into the Colorado State visit, I knew I was going to be a Wyoming Cowboy.
Really?
I couldn't tell you why that was, but I just knew. And I think my dad knew too. He knew that's what I wanted to do. And later that night, we pulled back into Burlington, and I was like, well, I'll probably make up my mind soon. I told my parents that, and I went downstairs, and I sat there, I was like, I already know what I want to do. I want to be a Cowboy. And I went up and told my parents, and they were ecstatic, and I called Coach English, and that's a phone call.
Sure. Again, in talking to your dad and your grandpa, they were really supportive. We were, laughing a little bit, but do you think was there a little bit of shock when you, especially maybe from your dad that played at CSU, and when Really? I mean, was there any kind of that, and maybe not necessarily disappointment. When I say shock, I don't mean disappointment necessarily. Maybe there was a little bit. I mean, was there a little initial shock or
surprise? Maybe.
Surprise, maybe. Okay.
At the beginning stages of it, my dad maybe probably had some of that, but he didn't show much the whole time he supported me. He said, whatever you want to do because it's your career, it's going to be your 5 years, it's your body that you're going to be, putting out on that field. So he supported me the whole way, and when I told my grandfather as well, that's what I was doing, nothing but support, and he was happy to be for me, and they always just joked that, they were going to have to store away their Colorado State stuff for a while, and but I'm pretty sure probably in a couple months they're going to bust that stuff back out.
So, got to ask, obviously got one more border war left, and hopefully maybe that'll be your best memory. What's your best border war memory to this point? And whether you played or even when you were growing up watching it as a kid, what's maybe one of your best or a couple of your best border war memories?
I have two. My sophomore year, 2009, when we traveled down there, we had to win the game to be a bowl eligible, and we won the game, and that was memorable for me because my dad was there, and he was on the sideline.
I remember that.
And as soon as we won the game, everyone rushed to their sideline to go get the food. Then I rushed over to my dad, and I thought that was a really special moment that I'll never forget. And then you can't forget last year's 44-0 win over them. That was very memorable. And that's just a game that I look forward to a lot. I believe the whole state of Wyoming does, and that's a game that I'll always look forward to, but if I'm playing in it or not.
Gotcha. All right, Brian, that's awesome.